Eddie. Lincolnshire, fab. Quite a lot of people from Lincolnshire. Okay. Am I allowed to just start, do we think? Do we think? I will. Okay. So, hello everyone. Thank you for chipping in so far. So, my name's Sarah, and what I thought would be helpful if we if I facilitated a bit of a discussion, but that it was a group discussion about funeral directing in 2020. So I'll just give a really brief introduction. So I'm a real relative newcomer into the funeral industry. So when I was asked if I would host a webinar, my initial reaction was, no, that's ridiculous, because I wouldn't have anything to tell people who've been doing it for much, much longer. And I thought, actually, maybe it's a nice opportunity to just facilitate a discussion. So I'm not looking to tell you anything. I just thought it'd be helpful if we all spent an hour thinking about what we're doing and how maybe things are changing and how we might want to evolve our individual services to meet a changing need. So I'm from Full Circle Funerals, and I decided that I wanted to be a funeral director towards the end of 2015, and then opened our first service in 2016 towards the end, and then we've just opened a second service just a couple of months ago. So background-wise, I started my working life in the NHS, where I was doing vascular surgery. And then I left that quite a while ago, and I had a company which had care homes for adults with learning difficulties. So my background is very much in health and social care, and I guess that's the philosophy that I've come into funeral care with. So what I'd like to do today is just try and frame a bit of a discussion. That maybe we could discuss what we think is changing. It'd be interesting to see how different people are experiencing that, a bit different places in the country, or because of maybe you're rural, or maybe you are more urban. It might be that you're down south compared to up north. Maybe we could just discuss how different people are experiencing it. And I thought we could just try and share some good practice and some ideas. And then we could hopefully take a few things away from it that we could think about and that we might want to implement into our practice. So I'm certainly not even going to begin to try and suggest that I know anything that you don't know. And I'm also not suggesting that there's any solutions that would apply to all of us. I just thought it might be a good space for us to talk about things. Does that sound okay? Please type now if you don't agree. And I thought we'd have lots of pauses to give people a chance to contribute. So, just please shout if it's not what you want. Well, I clearly can't shout. Type in capital letters if you're not happy, and then I'll spot it. So I thought if we go through what the drivers to change are at the moment, or in the next year or so, I thought it was helpful just to reflect briefly on what a funeral is for. Again, we might all have slightly different opinions on that, which is fine. Just sometimes helpful to stop and think about it. It might be helpful to have a brief thought on how our customers might be changing, about what our role is, and actually maybe whether that's evolving. Maybe share some thoughts about options and what funeral options look like today. And then I thought if we close on people's thoughts on what excellent funeral care is, and I'm not suggesting that's the same for everyone. As people are joining us, if you'd like to just type for us where you are and how long you've been doing it for, and then after the next slide, we'll hopefully people will share their thoughts, and maybe it just gives you a chance to reflect on what your service at the moment and maybe how you think it might need to evolve. Okay, so hopefully we can click on the next one. There we go. Drivers to change. So I think there's a lot of things that are driving. Hello. Hi, Lisa from Solihull. So there's a lot of things I think that are driving change in the funeral industry. Most people would accept that it's been that funeral care hasn't had to change for a very long time. It's been it's not had to evolve hugely, but that over the last 5-10 years or so, actually, there's been a lot more drivers to change. So the internet is a fairly obvious one. There's now obviously lots of price comparison websites. There are things like Pinterest where people can look around and get ideas. Social media is another huge one. Hello, Liam. Hi, Kevin Sue. Thank you. Social media would be another huge one. So people are sharing their experiences. They're taking photographs at funeral. They're posting them online. That's helping other people to have a widening understanding of what's possible at funerals, and increasing public awareness about what's available. Mobility. So people are more willing to travel. We're a much more mobile population. People go on holiday further afield. People travel further afield. We'll go to shops that are further afield. And again, really interesting to hear your views. Oh, bye, Nick. Thank you. So it'd be really interesting to hear your views. But we certainly have found that people are willing to travel quite far to come and use a service that they think meets their needs. So rather than immediately going to the local funeral director, or this perception that you set up a funeral service and you serve the population in the few miles around you, people seem to be willing to travel quite far if they find something that they think actually resonates with them. So that's certainly a change to how I think funeral directors have structured themselves previously. Hello, Jason. Thank you. Globalization, we're much more aware of what's going on in other countries. People are sharing that information, so we all seem to be aware of how people funeral practices in Ghana or in China, or what the different committal opportunities are in different countries, where we know more of what's going on, and that is probably informing the families and the people that we're supporting. People travel a lot more, as I've mentioned, and I don't know about you, but we certainly find that we're making arrangements with people who live in other countries, who've emigrated, who go elsewhere. We're having to try and interact with people who live in different continents. We might have one son who lives in America, one who lives in Australia. We're trying to coordinate an arrangement with people who are really quite far away. We are increasingly, we're not there, but I suppose it could be argued that we are a society now that embraces diversity more. So we certainly seem to meet families who are more culturally diverse. There might be members of the same family who have very different spiritual and religious beliefs, and that goes beyond just simply religion and belief. Hello, Simon. And goes on to how people choose to live their lives in a basic way, the level of ritual that they engage in, their sexuality, where they want to be, how they want to be doing things, how they choose to express themselves. People seem to have different influences. I think it used to be, again, I wasn't around, so it'd be really helpful to hear what the people feel who've been around for a lot longer, but that the church was a really significant influence, and the local community was a really big influence on people previously. As we're becoming a bit more individual, people kind of live in their little bubbles and travel around a bit more and are less connected. This is an argument that people are being influenced by different things. There's also this upsurge now of influencers, so people that we don't know, but who we look up to, and whose opinions on things like funerals or how they might like to have a funeral seems to have an impact. David Bowie being the obvious with his direct cremation. That wasn't really a direct cremation. That seems to have an influence over how people perceive funerals and the opportunities. Consumerism. I know some people are very critical of this, others embrace it, but that idea that people want to spend their money and spend their money in a way that they think reflects them and have a lot of choice. And regulation is one. Regulation, obviously, as you all know, that's fairly topical at the moment, but that could certainly, if there was going to be regulation within the industry, I think that potentially could be a driver to change. So you will chip in at this point. Does anyone have any ones I've not mentioned? Do people think that they are that in their sort of day-to-day work experience? Are you seeing changes in the way that people interact with funeral care, the demands that they're placing? Or not at this point? We can go on to the next slide. I'll give it a minute and see if anyone. Poverty, okay. So Clara's suggesting poverty, in that you think that is more of an issue with funeral prices rising. Okay, yeah. So another big driver to change is that there are just a lot more options available. So a lot of people producing goods for funerals, a lot of people wanting to enter funerals. Phone calls, okay, yeah, so less face-to-face. People wanting to do things more remotely. We have people who make a first inquiry by email, even after somebody's died, which I always find slightly surprising. But they would email and say, somebody's died, please could you help us? Yeah. Be interested to explore the poverty one a little bit more. For people who've been doing it for longer, does the challenge that people face in terms of being able to pay, does that seem to be increasing? Does it feel the same? Okay, yeah, so Cara's point being there's more discussion about whether spending money equates to a better funeral or more respect. Okay, thank you, Carol. Yeah, okay. So that's really valid. And actually, because I haven't really experienced anything else, having only been doing it for a number of years, that's very much all I've experienced, which is that a proportion of people would phone and ask about price. Okay, that's interesting. Thank you, Stephen. Again, I don't know any different. So maybe that there is just less help, therefore contributing more to poverty. Should we wait for one or two more comments and then we'll go on to the next? It'd be really interesting. It's really hard, given that I'm the only one talking, but it would be interesting to know how more people phoning up and talking about price as the sort of first thing they ask about, whether that's changed anything in the way that you do. Yeah, Barbara, yeah, we've experienced that as well. So we find that a lot of people don't seem to know the difference between a funeral director and a celebrant. But yeah, they know of a celebrant, or they get an order of service from a funeral they've been to previously and appreciated, and then contact that celebrant. Yeah, so maybe the referral pathways in and the recommendations of funeral directors are changing. It used to be just the link between the funeral director and the church. Okay, so Nicholas, yeah, so you're reading it, I don't know why I'm reading it out. But yeah, just maybe a change in people's priorities on what is important. Yeah, and again, lots more quoting for a funeral. Okay, shoot, and it's interesting because it'd be interesting to explore what drives that change. I guess a lot of what drives people asking for advice is that is certainly what the media focus on. Yeah, so more people actually having to pay because they're not covered by life insurance. Maybe there is more poverty. I guess that's a whole discussion that's probably beyond the scope of this. Could it also be that people don't know what else to ask? They're used to asking more questions before they buy a service or a product, and then suddenly they're faced with having to choose a funeral director and they don't really know what else to ask. They don't have a better question. So the question is, how much does it cost? And there certainly seems to be a big perception that most funeral directors are trying to rip people off, or it's very overpriced. So that seems to be one of the first questions. I'll wait for Nicholas. Were you typing, Nicholas? Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. Right, I shall bob on to the next slide just while. Oh yeah, someone else is typing. Okay, yeah, great, Nicola, thank you. We'll come on so one of the next slides is about customer expectation and how they're changing, how our customers are changing. So hopefully we'll capture some of that there. Okay, so slightly different, but I guess aligned to what we're talking about in the services we offer is, I suppose, that fundamental question of what a funeral is for. Yes. Thank you. Yes, good, Kari. See, that's the conclusion of the whole thing. That's where we're meant to get to in an hour. So what's a funeral for? And I think it's sometimes quite helpful just to stop and think about that for a couple of minutes. So because presumably, or I believe that it's different for different people, and that maybe part of our role as a funeral director is to support people to understand maybe what it's for them. So what the need is that we're trying to meet. Okay, yeah, Paula, thank you. Yeah. So we're getting a lot about costs. So maybe if we'll come back to that actually at the end, because it sounds like that's one of the, particularly for people who've been doing it longer, that's been a big change, which is interesting because I don't know any different. So in terms of what a funeral's for, to some people, the funeral will be very much about committing the person who's died to the afterlife and fulfilling a ritual to do that. And then I suppose you could argue that the funeral director's role is to make sure that that ritual is effectively carried out, so that the family can rest assured that the person who's died is committed to the afterlife and that's been done properly. So that would then kind of define the funeral director's role as the upkeeper, the upholder of tradition, and to support families to do that. My perception is that to other families, the funeral seems to be a final gift to the person who's died, either because the gift is that you are fulfilling their wishes, or that the gift is that you are putting in a lot of effort and creating something beautiful for that person. We certainly, in the short period of time that we've been doing it, there seems to be a sense that the person who's died is very much in the room and is experiencing the funeral, and their perception on whether it has been done well, not done well, whether they would have been happy with it is really important. Others seem to perceive the funeral as the opportunity to say goodbye, so and being part. Yes. Yeah, well, and I suppose I'm not saying I think that's what everyone is doing, but I think for some people, particularly those of a Christian persuasion or other religious persuasion, the funeral ritual would very much be about fulfilling a ritual which is consistent with their belief system. So no, I agree. I'm not saying that's what everybody's doing. I'm just saying that maybe our part of our role is to help people to explore what it is that they need from it. Thank you, Nicola. Some people maybe see it more as an opportunity to say goodbye, and that to be done effectively and probably in a group. And other people would argue, and I know a lot of the funeral profession talks about this, that an effective funeral arrangement process and funeral would help with a more positive grief process. Celebrating the life, yeah. Okay, yeah, I've put that in a slightly different section, but no, fair point. Is that what it's for? And I guess maybe that fits in with the final gift, so the celebration of them and the saying goodbye, coming together to reflect the person. Thank you. So I suppose the reason I thought it was helpful just to dwell on that for 2 minutes is I would suggest that that's possibly changing and becoming more diverse. There probably was a time where what the funeral was for was more predictable, whereas now I think when we're faced with very different people, they might have very different needs and very different ideas, subconsciously or consciously, about what a funeral's for. And I suppose the other question is, who is it for? And certainly I would perceive in the families that I've supported in the short time that I've been doing it, is that it seems quite different for different families. Some people would see it's very much for the person who's died. As long as they think it's good, doesn't matter if anyone attending couldn't really connect with it. Other families seem to very much feel it's about the close family and about finding a way for them to have their needs met. There seem to be other situations where it seems to be a recognition of a plus. Jean says plus. What does that mean, Jean? Whether it's for a wider community, and other people seem to, on occasion, particularly if it's been a very public loss, under traumatic circumstances, that maybe actually some of the funeral is about engaging the general public. And again, it's not so much to open up a debate about, well, it'd be helpful to hear your thoughts on some of these things, but it's not that I'm suggesting it is for one person or for one thing. It's more, I guess, exploring whether people have seen a change in what the funeral's for and who it's for, or whether people agree that there might be times where it's for to achieve certain objectives for certain people, and it might be quite different in other times. What do you think? Or is it gobbledygook, and shall I continue? Yeah? Yeah? So that's sort of about a change in the philosophy of the industry. Yeah? I mean, I guess, Cara, there might be some people who don't want to do that. And I certainly don't want to impress on anyone how they should run their service, or I just think it's helpful for us to reflect on what our value set is, what we want to offer, who we want to offer it for, and then make sure that we do that and be honest about what we are. I do agree weekends are a problem. I don't know about where you all are in the country, but around here, having a funeral on a weekend, it's a lot more expensive. Okay, well, yeah, I don't think I've got anyone from the crematoria here listening, but yeah, I mean, that's certainly an issue where we are. Yeah, it's difficult. Weekends are difficult. Does anyone want to comment on any of this slide, or should I move on to the next one? Go on. Okay. So this is, somebody's already mentioned this, but it was helpful to think about how our customers are changing, because then if we see our role as trying to meet the needs of the families that we support, then I guess how they're changing and what they want is a key part of that. So some of it we've already sort of touched upon. People are more transient and are less likely to live in one place for most of their lives, although that's not true for everybody. It seems that more people are individuals rather than being in groups, or they might be members of different groups who have slightly different needs. Customers are... How much do crematoria charge? So we're in Yorkshire, and the crematorium charge, so the baseline crematorium in Leeds is £884 during the week. Weekends are at the crematorium staff's discretion, and they have to be charged an overtime rate. And I'll let you, sorry, I think you have a conversation together. I shall carry on. So back to our customers. The people's spirituality is changing. Less people seem to adhere to a particular religion, and people seem to be flexing that. So there might be some aspects of religion they identify, not others. There's almost a traditional religious individual, and then a more modern religious individual, and then more secular people who may still describe themselves as spiritual, and that has an impact on the needs that people would have within a funeral. Families are more complex. So I don't know about where you are, but we would certainly have it is unusual for you to be dealing with a nuclear family who are all geographically in the same place, and direct cremation. Yeah, that's we can come on to that. That's interesting to see how people are experiencing that, whether that is a change or whether that's just the media. We also live more in a self-help era, so I think people seem to be doing more research, thinking more about what their needs are, become more psychologically aware, and also because the families are a bit more complex. They go to different places, they live in different places, they have different beliefs. What we've experienced is that you might meet a family, and within that family are the people with really quite different needs. Does anyone want to comment on any of that? Shall we explore Simon's point? So Cara and Susan, I think, have been, and Carol have been having a discussion about crematorium being open at weekend, and I'm sure most people would share that would be a good thing. Maybe we could ask SAIF to get onto that with the ICCM. And Simon has raised direct cremation. So do people want to respond to Simon? I guess the questions are, have you seen an increase in direct cremation? When you're talking about direct cremation, I've assumed you're talking about family makes contact, they don't want to have a service, they don't want to come and visit the person who's died, they would just like you as a funeral director to arrange the cremation and then deliver the ashes. Okay, yeah, so Melanie saying, yep. Yeah, no, look, fair enough. I suppose you're probably thinking we do that all the time, and maybe everybody who's engaged in this conversation is thinking through these things all the time, in which case I guess. So we're talking as a group of converted. It's just to, I guess, open up the discussion. Maybe not everybody agrees that customers are changing. Yeah, I agree, Barbara. So there's we have certainly seen a move to direct cremation, but not with a view to there being no service at all, more with a view to them doing more like a post-funeral ritual, so having some sort of event. Wow, Paula. Interesting. So Paula's at 65% increase since January. Okay, so that is a big... And that's interesting, because I suppose the drivers to that, I would guess, are twofold. One would be that people don't see the value in a funeral, and don't feel that process with the person present is of value to them. That would be their perception. Whether you agree or not is, you know, people will have different opinions. And the other big driver to that presumably must be cost. What do other people? Blended families, Jonathan. Okay, and Nicola, have you seen an increase in direct cremations? For what it's worth, just while you're typing, we seem to use the direct cremation slot at the crematorium a lot. So use the crematorium for its ability to cremate, as opposed to oh, yay, someone agrees. Yeah, no, yes. So we've certainly seen an increase in people wanting to use the crematorium to cremate, but are holding the service elsewhere. So, for example, we might support them to arrange a funeral service on a given day, and then after the service, they say their goodbyes and say the words of committal at the church or in another function room. Then we would bring the person back here to look after them, and then they would go to the crematorium to use the direct cremation slot the following day. So we wouldn't class that as a direct cremation, we would class that as an unattended cremation. Don't know, oh, lots of people are typing now. Yeah, so an increase in prepaid plans for direct cremation. We do the same. We've certainly helped a few people to arrange. And what do you all feel about a direct cremation? Okay, yeah, sorry, so back to John's comment. Sorry, they all came flying through. So, yeah, I guess with my view on direct cremation is that it's, I don't think I'm in a position to tell people what they should or shouldn't have. My concern would be that people choose a direct cremation because they they haven't, I guess, been given the information to decide whether a funeral that they have engaged in and they have chosen actually might be better for them in terms of meeting their needs. Oh, I don't know how to scroll down now. Okay, so Melanie's saying 2 years ago. Oh, I think something's gone wrong with my screen. Oh no, I'm good, sorry. Smaller gatherings at cremation, followed by a service of Thanksgiving. Yeah, so people focusing more on maybe the post-funeral rituals that are happening after the committal. Okay, yeah, no, I agree, Nicola. What do others think? There certainly is an increasing anxiety, isn't there, about direct cremation. Yeah. So, and it's interesting because this, I think, cost does seem to be a big driver, and people thinking that they can't identify with a funeral ritual, or that they can't create something that they can identify with. Yeah, agreed, Carol. That's really valid. So, because people used to say, "Stick me in a bin bag and put me in the bin," and then the family would chuckle. Or the person who was who had died, their wishes were, "I don't want anything," and people would chuckle because direct cremation wasn't available. And we certainly see people who then seem torn between fulfilling the wishes of the person who's died, and still doing something. So maybe the fact that it's available actually makes it poses a challenge for families. We've had the same with people who've wanted to donate their bodies to medical science. That was clearly their wish, but it's really obvious with the family when you're supporting them that's really not their wish. And then there is that's a difficult, that's quite a conflicting situation, I suppose, when the person who's died has expressed something that the family really don't want. Concern of direct cremation is mostly held by the big companies that care for the body. Once the early drop, how would standards be upheld? Okay, yeah. So the sense that if that with direct cremation, maybe the care for the person who's died wouldn't be of the same standard. Yeah. Yeah, no, so Simon's made a valid point, because we certainly have people who on the initial contact with it would say, we don't want anything, we want to have a direct cremation, nothing else. And we say it's absolutely fine, and we meet with them pretty much to, you know, clarify what it is and go through the paperwork. And then actually once it feels like once they've met you and they think that, you know, they feel relatively comfortable with you, then they start to ask questions, and then as they explore things, they identify that actually there might be some parts of a very simple funeral that they find helpful. Agreed, Carol. Yeah, we need to not get the sense that there's a good funeral, a less good funeral, and then, you know, a kind of bargain basement one just because it's a direct cremation. We had some feedback recently from a family we supported with direct cremation, and I have a look at all the feedback, and as I was reading it, it was so glowing and they were so happy. And then when I asked the person who supported them, it was a really pure direct cremation, but from the feedback it clearly had met their needs and they felt like it had been carried out in a way that really helped them. So let's quickly move on. But do it's good that people are okay. So John's saying the least palatable aspects of direct cremation. So I mean, John, you raised an interesting thing. Okay, so I mean, I guess what you could then argue is that if you want to offer direct cremation as a funeral director, you could flex that in a way that works for you. So if you doesn't feel right, if you want to be able to offer that service to people, and you think it's an important part of being able to offer all of those options, I suppose you could say, but I will share with you the time, and I will share with you when, if you want to know, and you could allow them to do that. We, for example, would, in our direct cremation, we would always, as part of the direct cremation, if a family wanted to spend time with the person who's died, we would always facilitate that, and we would certainly ask them if they had an opinion on when they wanted the cremation to take place, where they wanted it to take place, and we would certainly try to. Yeah, thank you, Sue. So yeah, some people commenting that pretty much they are doing that, so offering direct cremation. But obviously consequences of that is it can have an impact on the price, and yeah, sorry, Sue raising definitely a point that a celebrant or a minister would clearly have something to add to the funeral than if people are doing it themselves, or there's a direct cremation, that there might be something missing. What are your concerns, Christopher, about prepayment? Okay. Yeah, that's probably a whole other SAIF webinar. And witness direct cremation. Okay, that's interesting, Sam. So is that with the direct cremation slot at the crematorium, the early morning slot, which is reduced price? Presumably you've collaborated with the crematorium to allow that. Yeah. And presume are the staff at the crematorium happy with that? Okay, so we've had families who have travelled with us, and or more importantly with the person who's died, to the early morning slot at the crematorium. But the crematoria here certainly are quite reluctant to allow the person to attend, because I suppose it doesn't fit with the criteria. Okay, so John's saying the real farewell is at the finality of disposal. No, Melanie, ours won't either. If any families want to attend, yeah, they don't see that as a direct cremation. Oh, okay. So Simon's, yeah. I think the difference, Simon, is certainly where we are, and I get the sense where other people are as well. Sorry, let's deal with, so with Simon's point, so families who's using the direct cremation slot as an unattended cremation is significantly cheaper. So it's the early morning slot. So that's why they have different rules. I suppose if you don't have that offering at the crematoria, then hopefully they should be very flexible in terms of family attending. So Christopher's talking about prepayment direct cremation. So a few people have mentioned they take prepayment direct cremations. So we've certainly taken the view that we just we secure it all. So we run the risk that the price of cremations will go up, and that will be a problem for us. Yeah. So same as Melanie, sorry, just giving you a new name. Same as Melanie. Yeah, we include the cost of cremation. We had a bit of a debate and thought that for simplicity, because it was really what those people wanted, we wanted to give them the security of that. Yeah. And actually, John, it's really valid. I think a lot of people talk, particularly the media, talk about direct cremation, and the term has become quite overused. So somebody else shared that. I think a lot of people say, I'd like a direct cremation, and then when you explore actually what that involves, it might not be what they meant. They just meant they wanted something quite simple. So I think Cara's asking Simon. Yeah, exactly, Christopher. No, that's valid. That's so certainly we've acknowledged that as a risk, but at the moment felt like a right thing to do for people who both want a prepaid funeral plan and would like a direct cremation. Yeah. Okay. It sounds like, well, it's clear from the discussion what's on people's minds. I think let me try and get through a few more slides and see if it prompts any other discussions. So further, you probably are all really clear on this, which is fine, but I found it interesting coming into this again just a couple of years ago to see what see different funeral directors, how they articulate what they see their service as offering and how they see their own role. And I've certainly perceived that there's a big difference amongst funeral directors in terms of what they think their role is, what they think they bring to the party, as it were. So I thought it'd be interesting to see whether you all have felt that has changed. Some of you, for the 20, 30 years that you've been doing it. And we'll probably find that within this discussion, quite a lot of people have quite different views on what their role is. And I would argue that's fine. I'm not saying we should all do the same, but it might just be, I don't know, I think it's always helpful to reflect on what you think you're doing. So some funeral directors very much seem to see their role as upholding tradition and ritual and supporting people to do the right thing, to not be overburdened by choices and bewildered by bereavement, and to very much tell them what traditions suggest they should do. Others would see their role, I think, as sharing opportunities with people, so saying what's possible and giving people the opportunity to work out what they want. Some funeral directors seem to articulate that they clearly see their role as giving direction, so that they, as the expert, would direct families in the decisions that they ought to make, and I suppose what would be the usual decisions in these situations, to give them quite clear direction. Others would see their role as very, very empowering, so sharing the information and then enabling families to work out what they want. Some people, and the co-op spring to mind, I'm sure there won't be anyone from the co-op here, but they talk a lot about personalisation. Some funeral directors are very much about personalisation. I've heard other people say, actually, do you know what, now there's just a pressure to personalise, and maybe we're putting too much pressure on people. So again, that's an interesting debate and an interesting discussion. Some funeral, I think, I'm recognising some of the names and have seen some of the things that you've talked about previously. So I think some funeral directors would see their role as facilitating new ritual, so not feeling like people need to stick to old rituals, but creating their own. And other funeral directors really don't agree with this, but some may see their role as more of a mediator between families. And again, it'd be helpful to, if you want to share maybe what you think, and particularly for those of you who've been around a while, whether you think that's changed. I've certainly read some kind of academic literature that suggests that the funeral director used to see themselves as the upholder of tradition, and that's now evolved into seeing themselves in a more facilitative role. Okay, there's a few people typing, thank you. Event organizer and facilitator, and more mediation, okay. Yeah. And again, just while someone's typing, certainly I feel that we do all of these things for different families. So some people, I think, need us to be more directive and to explain what the traditional ritual would be and help them to adhere to that. Other families seem to just really not want that, and they want you to just share what's possible and give them the space and opportunity to do what they want. Some people really seem to indicate personalization is important. Others really, particularly seem to want to be deliberately impersonal for reasons that are maybe personal to them. Okay, quite a few people typing, so we'll wait and see what. Because I would argue once we kind of think about our role that and how that's changing, then that helps us to inform the funeral directors that we're going to be in 2020. Oh, people must be typing long messages. Okay. Okay, so Faith saying a bit of both. So be quite traditional in the way that we present ourselves. Barbara saying every family will different. Some want to be led, others want to lead, and then everything in between. So that probably echoes our experience, I guess. So we go back up to Cara. Where do we begin? Experienced member of support. An experienced member of staff to support bereaved families, to be more involved in care of the body, be more hands-on. Yeah. As the church has receded from influence, FD has taken that role. I'm not even going to try and say that word out loud. Okay, that's interesting, John, thank you. Yeah, so maybe as influences from other more allied kind of funeral professionals has regressed, maybe funeral directors are sort of taking that on. Yeah. Maybe without being able to do it, particularly if people's interaction with the church is becoming more complex and they want to kind of pick and choose bits. Okay, yeah, so Liam's saying that very much our role is about knowing everything that's being the expert on what's available and then making sure that we share that with people. From traditional to bespoke, but very much a sharer of possibility. Barbara agrees with Liam, fabulous. So actually quite a mixture, again, of perceptions. Some argument more towards sharing what's traditional, but most people seem to be erring on that actually it's about sharing what's possible. And then Cara's point, particularly in relation to some more sensitive issues like personal care and empowering people to be part of that. I'll wait and see what this next little flurry of written notes, haven't even looked at them. Just wait for these. I think there's 3 people typing, and then we'll just bum through the next few slides and then get on to, I suppose, what are we going to do about it? Slide. Yeah, absolutely. So that recognition that a lot of what was being sold or people are encouraged to do was more about funeral directors and the industry than actually about. Okay, yeah. So about personalisation. So my again, as a complete newcomer, I've never met a funeral director who doesn't seem to be coming at this from a good place. And those that seem to, I guess, have a fairly standardised offering, my perception would be that a lot of that is because that's what they know, and that's worked for a long time, and they feel that what they're doing is supporting people by not putting pressure on them to make decisions. They're not making things difficult. They're not overwhelming them with choice. They are telling them a safe, appropriate way to do things. Okay, yeah, thank you, John and Liz. Yeah, I would agree. So that's pretty much that. It really depends. We need to be evolving, or we need to personalise what we're offering to the family, not just to the person who's died. Yep. Yeah, Paula. So yeah, lack of qualifications, very valid. I'm going to get a few more comments and then I'll... Okay, so a few more people arguing for empowerment. Some arrangers know little about funerals, bereavement, ceremonial music and so on. Yeah, so maybe just a lack of knowledge from some people who are advising the families. There was a thing there. So Liam saying we need to interview effectively to draw out the full picture of depth of what they really want, given the full choice of total empowerment with a new confidence. Thank you. Okay, right, we're going to go on to the next. Before we can cover, I think we should chat about regulation briefly at the end, because it's pretty, it's important, and training. Okay, so religion certainly is something that has come up a lot since I've started, and it certainly seems to be evolving. People's interactions with religion is evolving, and I suppose therefore its impact on funerals. So I've now, after 2.5, 3 years, sort of managed to, I think, get my head around some of the differences. And again, it would be helpful to hear your thoughts on this. So traditional religious is one of the things that I found challenging is matching families with the clergy who will meet their needs, and trying to get a sense of what the family wants, and therefore being able to suggest a clergy to them who is willing to deliver that and not feel that they've been compromised in terms of their own belief system. And again, I read something very interesting, not suggesting this was my original thought, but that there were sort of 3 groups really. There's traditional religious, and that is very much where the minister would see their role as being the voice of God and speaking the voice of God through generally the Book of Common Prayer. Then there is, and that their primary purpose really, and what they are doing, is effectively supporting the committal of the person who's died to God. Then there's the more modern religious, which is a bit of that, but also a recognition that it's about the needs of the congregation and the needs of the bereaved, and reflecting the person who's died. And then the more secular funeral, which I guess some would argue is sort of developing, is personalised, but sort of develops its rituals of its own. And again, this might not be something that's particularly on anyone's mind, but it's certainly something that that we are constantly trying to successfully navigate by making sure that people's spiritual and religious needs are met, and then matching it with clergy who feel able to do that but aren't compromised. I don't know if I've articulated that very well, but so I don't know, we'll wait for a few comments to come through. Okay, maybe this isn't capturing people, so we'll go on to the next one. So I think what the conversation seems to be focused on in the chat box is about regulation, training, what the skills are of the arrangers. Okay, yeah, Nicola, yeah, sorry, that's more to the last slide. So I suppose I'm talking about people who maybe aren't affiliated with a particular church, but who would either like the service at the crematorium, or who would like to use a church where they're not regular churchgoers. Yeah, I think they're often, well, again, I don't know, but we sort of seem to get the sense that there have been relationships. I think one thing I've learned is if a family is saying, we'd like a church service, we're Church of England, but we really want it to reflect the person who's died. We want to, we really want to take part. We don't want it to be a huge amount of sermon. We really want it to be about them, but we would like a religious element. I suppose one of the things that I've learned is that that's not to every minister's liking. Not every minister would think that that's acceptable, and who am I to tell them it is? So it's about trying to get to know where people sit on things so that you can make those matches so that people's needs are met, and it isn't compromising the clergy. Yeah, that doesn't seem to be put into practice here. Don't know if others have that. So Nicola asking, in terms of a committal to God, whether that makes it a Christian service, and whether someone else should be doing that. I would argue, as long as the family understand that you are not an ordained minister, and that's not significant to them, then if you're happy to deliver those words and they understand who's delivering it, I certainly wouldn't. I think it's about transparency, about sharing information, and then letting people decide. Okay, should we bob on to personalisation? I don't know if we get switched off at an hour. I'm sure you will have other things to do as well. So we've talked about this a bit, haven't we? But there seems to be a growing sense that funerals are about being personalised. And I suppose the only thing I wanted to reflect on is that actually personalisation is is a continuum, just like anything else. Some people may want something completely personalised. For other people, it might be small touches. Some people, certainly that we've supported, would like it deliberately impersonal, particularly if the relationship was quite complex, or if the person themselves was quite complex and they don't think the funeral is the time to be particularly authentic about the person. They would like it to be fairly understated and fairly impersonal. And I suppose someone asked me the question, I think it's very valid, we need to talk about whether we are potentially adding pressure to families by saying personalisation is the pinnacle of a funeral. So I thought that was interesting to talk about. Okay, yeah, let's do that. So Cara would like to chat about care of the physical care, personal care of the person who's died. So it's not a slide. Maybe it is it? No, it's not. So do people want to offer their opinions on that? I think Cara has shared her view previously, which is that it's an important part of the funeral director role to make that accessible, to support people to feel that once they know that that's possible, that actually a lot of people find that very meaningful and want to engage in that. Okay. So Jade's saying that anything that should be done should be discussed with the family first, so the idea of informed consent. I think we are. Well, I think we're opening up the discussion about care or treatment of the person who's died that's not openly discussed, but I think Cara is also opening up a discussion about whether our role or the role of a funeral director is very much to or part of it is very much to enable families to explore the idea about whether personal care would be helpful and might be an important and meaningful process for them. Okay, so yeah, it seems to generally be, so where we are now, great support, sort of missed. Okay. So Liam also raising the issue that there is, that the way that we physically look after people is evolving because of the time sometimes it takes for people to be brought into our care. So there seems to be a few things coming up, which is the idea of making sure that we share the options with families, including their involvement, that we openly discuss what's happening. Yeah. Okay, great. So Jean's saying she discusses it at arrangement. So actually, again, we share what we do. This is quite important to me, and I think it probably comes a little bit from having a medical background. So the idea of informed consent and first doing no harm, I guess, is kind of what I've grown up with. And I would very much share that it's really important that I think it's important to discuss with the family how the person who's died will be looked after. And we discuss that with every family. We start off very, I suppose, gently. And say that there's a range of ways that somebody could be looked after. The most important thing is that they're in a safe place and that they're cold if possible. And then beyond that, it's very much what you would like and what you think they would like. And we start to gently explore options. And we share a level of detail that they seem to be asking for. For some people, that is, a lot of detail, and they want to see physically the items that you would be using. A lot of people don't want that detail, but give you a steer. We encourage families to be involved if they want to. I have to say the majority of people don't, or maybe are involved in a small part, for example, putting nail polish on or applying lipstick, but maybe don't want to be involved in full personal care. I know, Susan, yeah. I'm amazed that it's just amazing you're all contributing. Yeah, I agree. I have no control over any of the tech. I'm like the least tech savvy person ever. We can feed that back to SAIF. Yeah, it is hard when you scroll up and down. So what seems to be, in terms of, Cara, I don't know if you want to just chip in to say if you're happy that we've covered what you want to. Yeah, agreed. And so what Barbara's saying is a lot of it's down to education. And I suppose that's down to sharing knowledge with the people who are sitting in front of you in an arrangement. So sharing what's possible, opening up a space to discuss it with them, but also more wider education, so that the general public has a better understanding of what's possible. Hopefully their expectations of what's possible would rise, and therefore those people who maybe aren't delivering that would need to, because people will expect it from them. Again, lots more people typing. Yeah, great, Jean. Yeah. I think that's key, isn't it? It's not giving so much information that people shut down or it causes distress, but giving information in a way that they can receive it, which I personally think is one of the hardest things of our job. Yeah, I agree. So Clara is saying because the people just feel uncomfortable doing that, and I have to admit, it definitely raises my anxiety levels when a family member wants to come and be involved or lead all of that or do that on their own. We do everything to facilitate that. But you worry that you've made that as beautiful as possible for them. You worry whether it is as they wanted it to be. You worry about that it's the right memories. It's the thing to do, but I think it takes a certain amount of bravery. Okay, yeah. So and I suspect a lot of you are the same. We don't have a front office, back office type arrangement. So when we support a family, we support them through the arrangement on the day, and we deliver or support with all of the personal care or complete all the personal care. So that means that we certainly do all of it. And I imagine a lot of people watching this would do the same. Okay, yeah. So saying that there's a respect for embalmers, and actually I think what my take would now be 3 years on is that we haven't, in the time since Full Circle started, we've only called an embalmer services once, but I think, like everything, there is a time and a place. It's just about finding the right time and place, and there being the right reason, and it being a fully informed choice. training is important. Yes. Yeah. Okay, so I think we've slightly run over. I don't know if we get cut off, but I guess, what does excellent funeral care look like? I think we've covered quite a lot of that. I suppose what we've talked about is openness. We've talked about people sharing what's possible with families. We've talked about making sure that we deliver our support to families in a way that is flexible to their needs, so that we spend our time considering what they need from us, how we might deliver our support in the best way to the family, and therefore to the person who's died. We talked about physical care of the person who's died. Question to the pro and anti-environmentalists: which is more intrusive? Yeah, it's an excellent example of the criticism of the box. Which is more intrusive, allowing a deceased that will be viewed continue to deteriorate, or embalming? I agree that in many cases it's not necessary. Yeah, okay. So hopefully that echoes, I think it was Liam that, I can't see the names. Yeah, hopefully I've echoed that. There's a time and a place. I just suspect that the time and a place is much more sophisticated than it's currently applied. Oh, thank you, John and Cara, and say thank you. Well, hopefully, what have I got? Yeah. So this is. I think we've kind of gone there together collectively. So we need to have knowledge and experience, and then we need to use that to support others, not to tell people what to do. There's a continuum between directing people and empowering people, and maybe we need to personalize our support depending on what that family needs, and not assume they want either. We need to try and deliver something that is tailored to their needs. We need to maybe constantly be checking ourselves and toying with that balance between tradition and personalization, and the degrees of which. I personally strongly feel that we should have a much more psychosocial perspective on things, and we should see ourselves very much as part of the health and social care pathway, and that we should see our process as a therapeutic process that, again, will be very individual to the family that we're supporting. And somebody's saying we should keep every funeral individual. Yeah, agreed, Nicola. Yeah. Well, hopefully it's been helpful. I think that's probably the end. Yeah, some parting thoughts. So I did really want to make that. I would hate to think anybody thought that I had anything to tell you that you didn't already know, but hopefully what it's been is a gathering of 40 people to share some thoughts and chew the cud on some things, and hopefully it's given a few things that people might go away and think about and either congratulate themselves for because you're doing it already, or think, oh, I could maybe do that a little bit more. I really think we should see ourselves as a really important part of the health and social care system, and we should behave as such, and we should be presenting ourselves as such, and we should be engaging with the public as such. And I think we need to share that vision of what funeral care is. I think we talked a bit about regulation. CMA hasn't come up, but I guess implicitly it has. I think it's really important that price is important and funeral poverty is important, but I also think that we need to talk about the therapeutic benefits of funeral care. We need to talk about how we are health and social care professionals, and we need to change some of the narrative around funerals, because that will hopefully increase people's expectations of the value of a funeral. Okay, great. I think maybe that's everyone signaling they've got to go. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining in and for sharing your thoughts. And yeah, thank you. I think that's maybe the end. Hopefully, I'll see you all. And I think so. I've written a book. So if you'd like to buy the book, buy the book. It's called Funerals Your Way. It won't tell you anything you don't know, but you might be able to occasionally give it to a family you're supporting who could go away, have a read, and it tries to share options and things with them. So, yes. Thank you, everyone. Bye. Bye. I shall turn myself off now. Thank you.